face is turning purple and his eyes just roll back in his head. What a beautiful kick by Kazim Ayek. Look at this streak of Mara. My God! My God, what a slam by Mara!
This is the FightBox Podcast with Don Roy.
Hello everyone and welcome to the FightBox Podcast. My name is Don Royd and thank you for downloading today's episode, which is brought to you on Wednesdays, absolutely free, thanks to the FightBox HD TV channel, and is available to download and listen to on www.fightbox.com, on iTunes, and on Stitcher. This is a podcast that is a reflection of what FightBox HD is all about, and that is the world's best compilation of combat sports disciplines, all on one channel, featuring interviews with fighters from all around the world in a range of different fighting sports. Everything from MMA, kickboxing, and Muay Thai to pro wrestling, sumo, and everything in between. From Hall of Famers to amateurs, every fighter has one thing in common, and that is a unique, interesting, and heartfelt story from their own personal experiences in the world of combat sports. And let me tell you what, it doesn't really get any more unique than the flamboyantly gay character of exotic Adrian Street, which he portrayed back in the 60s, 70s, in a time when people were not as politically correct as they are now. Gay marriage has been legalized in the United States and continues to be a more widely accepted thing. But back then, just imagine when everyone was still quote, kayfabing or pretending that professional wrestling was real. The wrestlers never gave any sign of it, that it was fake or fixed or predetermined inside or outside of the ring. And so imagine being Adrian Street driving down the road when you pull into a coffee shop full of bikers and suddenly, you know, Adrian Street, who was just at the matches a few hours ago, walks in there and what kind of trouble he might get into. If you are listening to this, you may have randomly stumbled upon it on YouTube. This is the first time that I've put a full episode up here on YouTube. It's just kind of an experiment. What happened, if you didn't hear part number 1, which can be downloaded at fightbox.com on iTunes or on Stitcher, as I mentioned previously, then you missed a great episode because I talked for over 2 hours with Adrian Street. Very informally, we just kind of, I didn't even start recording until 5 minutes into the conversation, and it just went on for about 2 hours. It was about the 1 hour and 15 minute mark that Adrian finally said, "Is this the interview?" And so, yeah, it was, and it was a great time talking to him. If you missed the first part of the interview, for whatever reason, you can look in the description of the video down below and get the link for that one and listen to the first part. He talks about the shoot wrestling that he did, the real shoot submission style that he learned from Wigan in England with the snake pit guys, who are known as being basically the toughest guys on the face of the planet. He also talks about getting into the professional wrestling business at the age of 16. Talks about growing up with a gas mask during World War II when he was a kid, and waiting for the Germans to drop gas bombs on England. Talks about wrestling in England in the 50s and 60s, training with Stu Hart down in the legendary dungeon, wrestling Shawn Michaels in his first ever TV match, and all kinds of other great things. That can all be downloaded by the link in the description down below. And the great stories continue in this second part too as well. And right from the beginning, ladies and gentlemen, right from the get-go, he already talks about these crazy stories, including the racist gimmick that Vince McMahon wanted to give him, and so much more. So I'm going to keep this interview kind of short here, or not the interview, but the intro rather, and we're going to get right into it here. So let's go to the second part of my interview with exotic Adrian Street right now. You have you ever wrestled for the McMahons or in New York?
I wrestled for them at the Omni for 2 shows. The only reason I actually got a paycheck from Titan Sports, but they wanted me to work for them as a manager. And this was much later in my career and everything like that, when I was more or less, I would prefer to have wrestled for them, but they wanted me for a manager. Now, you know what they were capable of. They'd make a good bloody wrestler like Matt Bourne and turn him into a bloody clown.
Right.
They take a good wrestler like Terry Taylor and turn him into a fucking chicken. You know what I mean? But I thought to myself, well, they can't do worse than that for me. They did. Or they would have. They would have if I'd agreed to do it. They said to me, listen, we want you to be a manager. We're bringing 2 guys over from Britain, Johnny South and somebody, I can't remember who the other guy was. They said, we want you to be their manager. I said, yeah, fine. Until it was explained to me. They were going to be called the British Skinheads, and I was going to be an over-the-top neo-Nazi manager. Thanks, but no thanks. I can't think of... There's not many things that I wouldn't have done, but not that. Because the thing is, I'll tell you now, I'm good at everything that I put my... I'm good at... Yeah. Hey?
And this was when?
In the early 90s.
Early 90s. And so when he was doing all these, cartoon character kind of and he wanted to, why did he want to bring in a skinhead group at this time? Because everybody was either a dentist or a clown or a chicken or something, and he wants to suddenly just bring in a racist stable or something?
Yeah, I was going to be like an over-the-top neo-Nazi racist, and I've never been that way. The thing is, I've never been a racist. I mean, I must admit that I don't like people who are like suicide bombers and they want to blow you up and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But I've got to say that if I'm going to be racially prejudiced, well, I wouldn't be racially prejudiced. It's if somebody doesn't like me or what I am, if they hate me for no other reason than that, then I'm going to hate them back. But the thing is, I've always gone on for two of my all-time heroes, actually, when I was a kid. No, 3 I can think of. One of them was Paul Robeson, and I liked him because he played the part in the Boa or whatever it was in Saunders of the River. Another one was Joe Louis. When I was a kid in school, if I wanted to get in a fight, all I'd have to say to the other kids is, I'm the Brown Bomber, I'm Joe Louis. And they say, no, you're not, I am. And you could get into a fight that way, you get into a good fight that way. Good practice for punching somebody's lights out, just for claiming that you were them and they'd want to sort of claim that they were. And the other hero I had was Jack Johnson. And I admired him because of the way he didn't give a bloody damn and everything like that, and the things he did, even though he was black. Can you imagine being black and being Jack Johnson that time? And I mean, he would go in the ring and play with the Great White Hope and all the rest of it, show him up, punch the shit out of him. He was running around all over the place with white women. You couldn't do that in those days. And what did he say? He said something. I'm black. The whites will never let me forget it. He said, I'm black. I'll never let them forget it. I admired him. I admired him because he had the same kind of attitude that I had. and I believed in painting. As you can imagine, my gimmick, I painted a target on myself.
Yeah.
That a lot of wrestlers didn't like. And my answer to that was, okay, don't like it, what are you going to do about it? I'll tell you another hero, but he was a German in the First World War. Baron von Richthofen, the Bloody Red Baron. What I admired about him was he painted his plane bright red. He went up in the sky, like when they do all the dog fights and stuff like that, machine gunning each other and all that kind of stuff. He painted, can you imagine the audacity? He painted his triplane bright red.
Yeah, I might as well just paint a target on it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I admire that, in actual fact, in my own way. That is what I've done throughout my career.
Did you, because I assume that back then, things were kind of worse with, hate crimes and things like this, and probably the police didn't pay as much attention to it as they did now. Did you ever get any kind of death threats or things like this from hate groups or something?
Individuals, not from groups.
Mm. And what would your response be back then if some guy came up to you and said, "Hey, faggot, you wanna fight somebody?" What would your response be?
Don't be cheeky. Don't be cheeky. And I tell you what, I do this. I draw a little circle on the wall and do this, and I'd say to you, "Don't be cheeky." And people around him would say, like, "He never touched you. What's wrong with you?" Difference is, I'd bury my finger in his eye, right up to my knuckles.
Oh.
Hey, if there's one, I'll tell you now. Modesty apart, I'm one hell of a wrestler. But if there's anything I can do better than wrestle, is fight. Now, when I say fight, I'm not talking about boxing, because I boxed. I used to box on a fairground booth, and I can't box. I used to box anywhere between 4 and 7 times in one day on a boxing booth, and I used to get $2 a fight. But I'm tough, and I can take it. If I could manage to get a punch in, I'd knock the guy inside out. My problem was actually landing one. But the thing is, there's a difference between fighting and boxing. I can fight. I come from a family and everything like that, and an environment where that sort of thing was, if you wanted respect, that is what you did. My great-grandfather was what you call a mountain fighter. It's not what you sort of imagine a mountain fighter to be in the States, like Daniel Boone and Kit Carson and that sort of thing. In Britain, barefist fighting and what have you was against the law, and you weren't allowed. You'd be arrested and put in jail if you did it within the city limits. But in the town I come from, up in the mountains in Wales, if you went outside up in the mountains, not only was it not against the law, but even, the police would be there watching and sort of making bets on it. And that's why it was called mountain fighting, because you went up in the mountains, up where the bull had his breakfast, they used to say. And they'd have a fight. My great-grandfather, Big Jim Arnold, had a fight. Now, if I was fighting you, right, everybody'd get around. Sometimes they'd put some string around, to make a circle or a square.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it'd be like the ring of people would be, stay back behind there. They put some stones on the ground, stay behind there. This is where we have a fight. Right. You're in one corner, I'm in the other corner. we've got our seconds. Have you ever heard the saying up to scratch? Is something up to scratch?
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to sell me a car, I'd say, is it up to scratch? Is it fit? You know what I mean? That's what it means. But the saying actually comes from, in the middle of this ring, they would scrape a line in the grass, in the dirt. That was a scratch line.
Okay.
So you'd come up to the scratch line, I'd come up to the scratch line. We'd start round one. You might hit me. We might be fighting for 5 minutes or 50 minutes. You knock me out. That's not the end of the fight. That's the end of the first round. My seconds would come, drag me back over to the corner. They'd try to revive me and everything like that. You'd have an allotted time, maybe a couple of minutes, to sort of bring me round. If they could wake me up and get me back to the scratch line, this is beginning round 2.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And that's where the saying comes from, up to scratch. I'm fit enough to get to the scratch line. I could knock you out 3 or 4 times. Every time would be the end of a round.
So as long as you can make it back up to that line, then you're good to go, right?
Yeah. Now, my great-grandfather is famous for having a certain fight against somebody called Cowboy something. Now, I still don't know who actually won. Some people say it was my great-grandfather, Big Jim Arnold. Somebody said it was Cowboy. Right? What I do know is that they fought all day until it was too dark to see each other. There's people like setting fire to bits of newspapers and holding it up and everything like that so they could see. Anyway, in the end, not only could they not see each other, but even if they got hold of each other, I mean, you could get hold of each other and wrestle and sort of hype each other, slam each other onto the ground, and that was all part of the deal. You could hit somebody with an elbow, you could butt them in the face with your head, you could do all that stuff. But anyway, they ended up having to shake hands and they agreed to come back the next day. So they fought all one day and half the next day. I still don't know who won, but they had a fight that lasted a day and a half.
Wow.
And I like to think that that's the kind of blood I got in my veins. Did you see the movie Snatch?
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm.
That Brad Pitt, the way he talked and the way he carried on, he was like a pikey.
Yeah.
Right? Like an Irish tinker and all the rest of it. We used to call them gypsy. We used to call them gyppos, but they lived all around our area. Those type of people. They could fight like, I tell you what, that was not an exaggeration.
Yeah, they literally fight for days. I had a guy on the podcast a couple months ago who organizes those bare knuckle boxing fights in England today, and he was talking a little bit about the history and stuff. And he said back then, like he said, it was illegal, and so what they used to do is they used to rent boats, and they would have the fights out on these huge boats, and they would fill the boats up with people, and they would line up fights for the whole day, and they would do it that way sometimes too.
Yeah. I've written a lot about it in actual fact in some of my books about that, because I'm trying to think of this guy's name now. That he could beat all of them, and he challenged he challenged Mike Marino to a fight. Mike Marino didn't want to know. I mean, Mike Marino was like one of the tough sort of pro wrestlers, but these gypsies were going to give him £1,000 to fight with what the hell's his name? I've written all about it in my book. But anyway, I wanted to fight him. For that kind of money, I wanted to fight him. But they wouldn't let me do it. They told me I wasn't famous enough. And that was one thing that spurred me on to start doing things that did make me famous enough. I wish I could think of the name. There's a guy called Gorman. What is his name?
Oh yeah, the king of the Gypsies, right? Is that Hartley Gorman or Bartley Gorman?
Bartley
Bartley
Gorman.
Gorman, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bartley Gorman. I got this book to learn more about that thing because I wanted to find out as much about the guy that I wanted to fight with. Quite honestly, I think in those days he would have bloody murdered me. But I mean, I wanted that £1,000. I'd have hurt him. I'd have made him bleed.
I'm just checking something online right now. There's a documentary film about this, and it's called Knuckle. You should check it out. Yeah, it's online. You can watch it. I think it's called Knuckle, and they go into a whole lot of detail about the history of it, and they talk a lot about some of the family members of the Gorman family that have lived on and are carrying on, and they're still doing it, these days. So.
I wish I could think the name of this guy is on the tip of my tongue. He was a Gypsy champion for. Oh, he was a Gypsy champion for years and years and years. In actual fact, he was supposed to fight with Bartley Gorman, and the last minute, he was getting on by then. Last minute, he called him and said, like, hey, you're the Gypsy champion, I don't want to fight. And I mean, that was almost unheard of with those people.
Yeah.
But by this time, he got really sort of quite old and all the rest of it. But he had fights all over the, oh God, what is his name? What was I going to say? Is this the interview, by the way?
I'm recording. Like when we about 5 minutes into the conversation, I started recording. So I hope that it's recording, but I don't know. So I'll find out when we hang up. So but the thing is, I have like a kind of a soundproof studio that I set up next to my computer with like a professional microphone and stuff. But I didn't have a chance to set it up or anything, so I just was kind of shooting the breeze with you. And I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. But
okay. This is my first record album, by the way.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that because I was gonna ask you about this movie that I saw, Grunt, the wrestling movie. What on earth was that? That was one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, weird, wasn't it? The funny thing is,
it was like wrestling's version of the Rocky Horror Picture Show or something like that.
Exactly. In actual fact, that inspired me to write a screenplay of my own, and it almost took off. At that particular time, when Linda and I did Grunt the wrestling movie, I'd only written and performed 4 songs, and 3 of them were in the movie.
Yeah, I thought they were maybe produced for the movie.
Yeah, no, I'd already written them. They were they were actually. They paid me a tidy sum actually for me to allow them to use them in the movie. But that inspired me to write another 8 songs that made this first record album. That's what the back is like.
Okay.
And since then, I've written another album called Naughty But It's Nice. So I've got 2 albums out. But the funny thing is, just now as we speak, there's a company in California that wants to redo this on vinyl.
Okay.
Yeah. So they want to reissue it and all the rest of it. So I'm just waiting to hear what apparently myself and the guy that actually put the music down for me. The company that wants to redo these is going to split the thing with us 50-50, and the 50-50 that we get, I'm going to split with the guy that did the music, that put the music down for me.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see where that goes. My oldest son, Adrian Jr., he's into music and all that kind of stuff. He's got 2 bands going at the moment. One of them is the Silver Brazilians. You want to check them out on YouTube. They're good. And the other one is the Broadway Twisters. They're on there as well. But he was actually brought up on Elvis and Buddy Holly. You know what I mean? He was born in 1962, my oldest son. And I mean, I was playing that stuff all the time when I was home and all the rest of it. Anyway, I think that's probably what sort of got into his blood and everything like that. But a number of years ago, there was a musical stage play in Britain called Buddy. It was a musical about the Buddy Holly story. He auditioned for it and got the title role. He actually played Buddy Holly.
Oh yeah. Cool. So have you done any other acting projects or like production kind of things or?
Well, there's a production in Britain at the moment that actually want to do a documentary on me for television over there. But she said that she actually wants to do a movie. There's also another company that wants to do a musical stage play, Exotic Adrian, the musical. Yeah, and all those things are kind of going on at the moment. I've got my oldest son Adrian doing the synopsis and everything like that for that because I think I'm too close to it to actually write it myself.
Mm.
I'm on my 7th book. If somebody says, okay, condense that into like a 2-hour production,
right?
I wouldn't know where to start. I prefer somebody that sort of kind of knows me well enough to do it, but not me. You know, if they want any advice and like what actually happened here, there, and everything, I can talk to them like I'm talking to you. You know what I mean?
Right. You may have to hire one of those writers from WWE.
Oh. Good job I can't reach you. That was good, actually, but I hate you for it.
that was a cheap shot. But yeah, I wanted to ask you about your clothing business because you said you're living right behind the studio and things like that. What I'm interested in is how did guys get their gear back then? I mean, was there like a certain person that you went to back in the day, or did you just have to?
I've always made my own.
Yeah.
When you read my book, you'll find that I started designing and making clothes for little mannequins when I was 3.
Mm.
I've been making costumes since I was 3 years of age.
Wow.
Not for wrestlers, obviously.
Right.
But I've always made my own stuff right from the beginning. I've always designed my own stuff. I've always made my own stuff. Right from the beginning. I tell you what, when we came out here, first of all, we were living in hotels and occasionally apartments. Linda had a sewing machine, and I had a scissors. Whenever I needed new gear, every time we went to, we'd look around, if we had time and everything like that, we'd look around and find a good fabric store and everything like that. I'd look, oh wow, I like this. Oh, I know what I could do with that. I'm only going to look at fabric and I can see a finished costume, you know.
What about the other guys? What about like, I don't know, Jack Briscoe or, Dick Murdoch? Like, where would a guy like that get his stuff?
There was a company called K&H used to do what I thought was horrible stuff, like thick, nasty sort of what's and everything like that. I know a lot of guys used to get their stuff from them. As far as gowns are concerned, Mr. Wrestling Johnny Walker, his wife used to make a lot of really nice really nice robes. She made robes for a lot of the big name wrestlers, including Ric Flair, Rick Rude, um, Paul Ellering. If you can imagine that sort of type of thing that they used to wear, they were all along the same lines, actually. They were just different colours, and sometimes they'd have, obviously they'd have different things written on them, and if it was Ric Flair, they'd have different colour feathers fluffed around them and all that, but like I said, I was wearing that type of stuff long before any of those ever thought of it back in Britain.
What kind of, how much would you invest into your look and your gear and the paint and everything like that?
I don't know, but it's a lot. But the thing is, it's my life. Obviously I did it as a living. Obviously I did it for the money. And all that sort of thing. But whereas some wrestlers would do it for the money and they didn't want to put anything back into it, you see a lot of British wrestlers and everything like that. They'd buy like a scruffy looking gown and everything like that that might be new in the beginning of their career. They'd have a 15 or 20-year career and they'd still be wearing the same bloody shabby thing at the end of their career that they won that they actually bought for their first match.
Yeah.
It was like a standing joke, actually. Every time I was on television in Britain, I'd have a different fancy jacket and outfit to go with it. And it got to be a standing joke. There's an MC called Bobby Palmer sort of actually coined it, but I heard it so many times I got sick of it. He said to me, "Is that a new gown?" I said, "Yes." Damn, every time you're on TV, you wear a different gown. I said, "Yes." So he said to the rest of the wrestlers in the dressing room, "Well, when Adrian Street finishes wrestling, he won't have any money, but he'll sure have some gowns." I heard that for the rest of my bloody life after that. But the difference is, those gowns set me apart from all the other people.
Yeah.
And I ended up earning more money than any of them had ever thought about earning.
Yeah, I talked to Lanny Poffo, is a friend of mine, and he said that when the Macho Man, whenever he wrestled, he had a running list in his head. He didn't even write it down, but every single town that he visited, he would make sure that whenever he went back there again, that he wouldn't wear the same thing. And
yeah, I did that a long time. I'll tell you, in the book I'm writing now, it starts off when I had a big feud with Randy Savage, and I used to beat the living shit out of him. He's one hell of an athlete, I'll tell you that, but he's not a wrestler. A lot of so-called top wrestlers in the States were not good wrestlers. In fact, I was a very flamboyant wrestler. I don't know anybody that was more flamboyant. But you'll find that all flamboyant wrestlers, or most of them, were either hiding or disguising something. For me, it was my height.
Right.
I'm 5'7". It was my size. I had feathers in my hair that were sticking out. But the thing is, I've always been interested in costumes and anthropology and stuff like that. And I realized that sort of soldiers in history would wear like big hats. They'd wear plumes. Knights in armor would wear plumes. Big cloaks and things like that. Red Indians would wear like big war bonnets. Zulus and stuff like that wear like big ostrich feathers and feathers all around their necks and all that kind of stuff. It made them look huge. I mean, Alexander the Great was supposed to be less than 5 feet tall, but like with a 2 foot tall upright sort of thing on top of his head and sort of a sculptured breastplate and everything like that. instead of him looking like a dwarf, which he was not much bigger than one, he actually looked like a sizable guy with the stuff he wore.
Right.
And that's where I got the idea of the feathers sticking in my hair, and my boots, I had the heels built up like 2 or 3 inches and everything like that to give me that little bit more height and all that kind of stuff. So I was very flamboyant, but I'm a one hell of a wrestler when it sort of started. So, I mean, that's where I'd go in for me. You find a lot of flamboyant wrestlers and everything like that. The reason they were flamboyant and showed out and everything like that was the fact they couldn't wrestle to save their lives. When I wrestled with Jimmy Valiant, for instance, he was shitting himself. He was shitting himself first time he knew he was going in the ring with me because he knew I could wrestle. And he says to me, comes up, he says, "Hey, brother," he says, like, you know, you're a hell of a wrestler and everything like that. He said, "I've watched you and all that sort of stuff." He says, "Now," he said, "I can't wrestle like you, brother." He said, "I don't know how to get into those holes. I don't know how to get out of them." He said, "You put into those holes on me." He said, "Brother, I'll be there till you let me loose. I can't get in them. I can't get out of them." I said, "Don't worry about it, Jimmy." But I mean, he was doing all this sort of stuff all around the ring. And he didn't know what day of the week it was. And there's a lot of them. If they were hung for being wrestlers, they'd die innocent. Ric Flair wouldn't wrestle me because I told him the way it was going to be if he did.
Yeah, I was wondering that if there was anybody who ever, you know, would refuse to work with you, you know, because either A, because of your gimmick, or B, because of your background.
Yeah, both.
Which was more often?
Well, I think it's part and parcel of the same thing. You know,
did anybody ever try to take any liberties with you in a pro wrestling match where you had to defend yourself?
Lots of times. I tell you, the last person that tried to take a liberty with me, and he was one hell of a wrestler, but he got no change out of me, was Sheik Adnan Casey.
Oh, yeah?
Now, it's funny because I knew him in Britain. He came to Britain and he wrestled as, was it Billy White Wolf or something, a Red Indian? But he's actually from Syria or somewhere like that. He's or Iran. I can't remember exactly where he's from now. Some Arab state, because I remember him telling me when he was Billy White Wolf in Britain that the Arab state didn't actually want him to leave, and they tied his money up. He had a lot of money in whatever Arab state it was. And they tied it up to try to make sure that he went back there.
Huh.
But for whatever reason, we were wrestling for the LPWA or something like that. It's a women's group in Laughlin, Nevada. And the main reason I went out there is because I actually went out as Linda's valet.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so instead of you know, normally Linda came in the ring with me and everything like that, whenever I wrestled for Flair, that was a ladies group, or this LPWA, I was basically her valet. But when we worked for the LPWA, we did a few mixed tag team matches. And there was some wrestling lady that Linda did an angle with called Sheba, and she was being managed by Adnan Casey. And like I say, he's a big bloke, he's a big guy, and he's a good straight wrestler. For whatever reason, I don't know what it was, he didn't want to talk to me. He got nasty, we got in the ring, and it was off. And he couldn't do anything with me. I got him down and I kept him down. And then when Linda came in, she beat Sheba, and that was the end of that.
Who are the most legit tough guys? Who were the toughest guys back then in your era? The legit tough guys, do you think? A lot of people say it was Ming, you know, the Kid Tonga, King Haku. A lot of people say it was Billy Robinson.
Billy Robinson would have kicked their ass wrestling. Let me tell you something. I'll tell you now about Lou Says. Lou Says was a hell of a wrestler. He didn't like people with gimmicks, and he would give him a hard time, and he wouldn't do business with him. He'd bugger him up. In 1957, Lou Says went to England and defended his world title against Dara Singh, heavyweight champion of India, in a Royal Albert Hall. Now, Lou Says was going to lose his world title to anybody. But at the same time, in Britain, Indian wrestlers, especially Dara Singh, who was a champion of India, had a huge following because can you imagine all the Indians and Pakistanis and everything like that that actually live in Britain? That place was heaving.
Yeah.
Anyway, they did a 1-hour draw. When the contest was over, a guy that was 5'6" tall, but weighed 265 pounds, walked up to the ring, and he was getting on by this time. An oldish man walked up to the ring and challenged Lou Says to a match.
After he had already wrestled this guy for an hour?
No. Challenged him for another time.
Oh, okay.
According to Lou Says, and I got to know Lou pretty well, and I asked him about this, and he said I would have wrestled him, but he never did, and nor would anybody else. When any American wrestlers were going to Britain, back in those days, there was 2 things they wanted written in their contract. A, they wouldn't have to wrestle anybody from Wigan. That's true.
Yeah?
They wanted it written into their contract.
Wow.
B, they would never have to wrestle with Bert Azarati. Bert Azarati is the guy that went up and challenged Lou Says.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, I got to know Lou very well. So I asked him, I said, Lou, what happened with you and Bert Azarati? Why didn't you wrestle? Oh, he said, I would have wrestled him. He said, it just never happened. Well, I know Bert wanted to wrestle with him. Bert was 5'6", an absolute powerhouse, absolutely. At that weight, he could get out of the Roman rings. He could hold himself out there like for 2 minutes.
Whew.
265 pounds. Right? He could stand on one hand. Back in those days, he'd squat with over 500 pounds, and even though that doesn't sound an awful lot, back in those days, it was a lot. But what he liked to do when he squatted was just he'd pick up a 235-pound barbell off the floor and he'd put it behind the back of his neck, squatting. You say, well, that isn't anything. You know, I mean, seeing as I'm 74 and I can do that now. Difference is, Bert would do it for a half an hour. He didn't count it.
Wow.
If you want to know about Bert, read my books. I've written a lot about him.
All right.
Nobody wanted to wrestle with him. I'll tell you something else as far as Wigan is concerned, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a Belgian wrestler called Karel Istas. He was 15 times Belgian champion in catch can wrestling and Greco-Roman. He actually represented Belgium in the Olympic Games in 1952. But apart from that, he was what they call a Dockland champion. He'd go down on the docks and anything you wanted to do, you could do, apart from pick up a bleeding hammer and hit somebody with it.
Mm-hmm. You
You could bite, you could gouge, you could butt, you could kick, you hit him in the Christmas crackers, anything went. He was the Dockland champion. Nobody could beat him. He was fantastic. Quite a large guy. But he heard about the snake pit, Billy Riley's gym in Wigan. He came over to Britain to wrestle professionally. First thing he said is, where is Billy Riley's gym? Where's the snake pit? Because he wanted to go there and show him what wrestling was all about. He went there, dirty little grimy mining town up in Lancashire. He went there wasn't anybody that couldn't beat him. They could all beat him. Everybody could beat him.
Wow.
Right? So he said he threw everything he thought he knew about wrestling out the window. I've already told you what this guy's pedigree was.
Mm.
He trained under Billy Riley himself for 8 years. Then he left, he went to Canada and came into the States, changed his name to Carl Gotch.
Ah. Interesting.
Need I say more?
Yeah. Huh.
He taught the Japanese all that bloody shoot stuff and everything like that, and they called him the god of pro wrestling.
Right.
But when he went to Britain first and went to Billy Riley's gym to show them what wrestling was all about, because bloody ass kicked by everybody he went on the mat with.
So what was it about Wigan? Did they just develop a style that was just, superior, or was it a mentality thing, or?
Billy Riley, it was Billy Riley's style of catch wrestling, submission wrestling. Now, before he actually founded that thing, he went all over the bloody place, South Africa, every night, different places all around the world, wrestled different people, and not only did he beat them, but I mean, he left a trail of bloody broken bones and bloody ended people's bloody careers with that type of wrestling. Now, bear in mind, when I started wrestling, I told you earlier, I got my break because I needed bodies. All these guys that I'm telling you about, before Joint Promotions exploded and started running all those shows, most of these guys I'm talking about were coal miners, Lancashire coal miners, tough, hard, bloody coal miners.
Yeah.
They were all terrified that if the bubble burst, you couldn't frighten them. The only thing that would frighten them is they'd say, like, what's going to happen if the bubble bursts? We've given up our jobs in the pit. What if we can't get jobs again? These people were so mean when it comes to money and stuff like that. They'd come down south. They'd be down south for a week or two, and they'd bring enough jam sandwiches down with them to last them the whole time because they wouldn't spend money in a cafe. That's the type of people that they were. But the thing is, you'd be wrestling them on TV, you'd be wrestling one of those guys on TV, and they knew that when they went in the ring with you, that Billy Riley would be at home watching that TV. Their mentors, the guys that taught them and everything like that, who would be down there bloody strokes like you wouldn't believe if they didn't go in and wrestle. That's what you had to put up with, mate. And I tell you what, if you couldn't hang with them, they wouldn't give you anything. And if you learned to hang with them, you could hang with anything else that the world threw at you. And you had your choice too, because the thing is, wrestling got so big. That was a magnet of wrestlers from all over the world. We had Turkish bloody oil wrestlers. We had bloody wrestlers from India and Pakistan who used to wrestle in the bloody dust in the dirt. We had bloody jiu-jitsu wrestlers from bloody Brazil. We had a bloody whole myriad of bloody Oriental bloody style of wrestling from bloody Japan and China and Korea and all those flaming places. We had a Greco-Roman wrestlers from bloody Hungary and the Sambo wrestlers from bloody Russia. We had Greco-Roman wrestlers from bloody Belgium. We had all those bloody high flyers and everything like that from France. And I'm wrestling. I was wrestling on average 40 times in a month in those days.
So when you're on the road for for 40 days at a time and things like this in a year, I mean, is it just the wrestling that keeps you in good shape, or are you, because you're doing it so much, or are you also going to the gym between shows and things like that?
I go to the gym whenever I could. I tell you what, Linda and I used to travel about in a Volkswagen Caravanette, and I got one. But you could push the roof up. You could push the roof up, and it was like 2 more bunk beds up there. There was a cooker in there, so we'd eat on the road and everything like that. I'd drive up to Scotland. What we'd do is I'd drive into the woods, find a stream, like a nice ice-cold mountain stream. I put bottles of wine in there and weight them down with stones. Right? On the way into the town, we'd find a store and everything like that. We'd buy some nice steaks and stuff like that. I'd go and wrestle. When the show was over, we'd drive back up into the woods and everything like that. By then, the wine would be absolutely ice cold. And that's what we'd do. But I had a set of dumbbells and barbells with me. And that's the reason I got my model that the roof went up. So we could stand there and do all this sort of stuff. I mean, if the weather was nice and all the rest of it, we'd take the, I'd take the dumbbells and everything like that outside. We used to climb mountains and sort of climb hills and everything like that all over the place, marathon walks. In actual fact, that's where I got my name from in the first place, Nature Boy. Was because of all the walking in the woods and running along the roads and the fact that we'd always eat good food.
Interesting. Mr. Street, I don't know if you realize this, but we've been talking for about 2 hours now. It's just about 2 o'clock in the morning over here, so I think I want to thank you for your time and all your stories, and I think I'm gonna hit the hay here. But I'll tell you what, I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too, man. I mean, talking about my favorite subject, namely me. Oh, dear. The only thing that stops you from being perfect is my modesty.
All right, so is there anything else you wanted to bring up or plug or talk about?
My books, because I'm an author now.
All right. So just go ahead and give us the names of the books and where people can find them. And
I tell you what, I've got your email, haven't I?
I'll send it to you. I know you got my. Oh yeah, I did. I sent it to you on the on the Facebook chat, so you should have it there.
Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, make sure I've got your email and everything like that. And what I'll do is I'll actually send you pictures of the books so you know exactly what they are. And the pictures I've got of the books are actually open like this, so you can actually read basically what it's about. That's me in Quest for Fire.
Okay.
That's me. I'm a Kazam there.
All right.
A Neolithic cannibal, and that's Everett McGill, and that's Ron Perlman. You know, the guy that's in Sons of Anarchy, and
okay,
and he was Hellboy and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Hell of a nice guy, yeah. It's funny because I was at like a celebrity show and everything like that earlier this year, and sitting not the next table but the table after that was Ray Dawn Chong. And the last time I'd seen her, we were in Africa together 35 years ago when we did that movie Quest for Fire. Okay, I'll let you go, mate. Otherwise, you won't get up until tomorrow evening.
Yeah.
But make sure I've got your email address, and I'll email you the pictures of those books so you'll know what they are.
Yeah. I just sent it. If you can check your chat or your messages on the Skype, I just wrote my email on there.
Okay, mate. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks again for the interview. Loved it.
Have a good one, mate. Nice
Okay.
talking to you.
You too. Bye bye.
All right, so there you go. That's it. Part number 2 of Exotic Adrian Street right here on the FightBox Podcast. I warned you. I told you that it would be pretty weird and that things are just going to continue to get weirder as time goes on. You know, what was up with that? Vince McMahon offering him a neo-Nazi skinhead gimmick? Do you believe that? You know, I don't know. Was it just a rib or what was it? But you know, back in 1993, some of the gimmicks that they had back then, Isaac Yankem, Skinner, you know, Bastion Booger, Max Moon, all of these, and then you want to throw in a neo-Nazi skinhead stable? Why? For what reason? Doesn't make absolutely any sense at all, and it would be terrible for business. You would think that at that point in time, after all these scandals with steroids and, you know, Pat Patterson molesting kids and all that, you know, they would want to get away from anything controversial whatsoever. But anyway, very bizarre story there from Adrian Street. And, you know, it's sort of like, you know, if you're a new wrestler, if you're just breaking into the business, if you want to get into professional wrestling, or if you're just a fan and you want to learn about the history of pro wrestling, go back and listen to part number 1 and this part number 2 again. But this time, do it with a pen and paper in your hand and take notes, because it's like sitting under the learning tree with Adrian Street. You know, he brings up so many names from the past that I didn't even know about. You know, guys like Bert Asarati and Dara Singh and Don Leo Jonathan and all of these old time wrestlers. And you know, you can Google search, or you can, if you're on YouTube right now, obviously listening to this, you can YouTube all of those guys and find out who they are and learn something about the history of professional wrestling and the way it used to be, because this sport has evolved so much. In fact, you know, when I'm watching Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar, I get a little bit of that feeling of how things used to be. You know, guys used to work a lot snugger. They used to be a little bit more stiff, used to be a little bit more believable in the ring. And you get a little bit of taste of that from time to time when you're watching WWE, if you watch carefully enough. And that's one of the reasons why I like to watch Brock Lesnar and Undertaker. That match, it looked like a fight. It looked, you know, you have these big elaborate entrances with the dead man walking down to the ring and Suplex City and all of this shit. But, you know, once that bell rings, man, those were just two guys that looked like they were in a bar fight going at it, tooth and nail. And that's the kind of pro wrestling that I like to watch, because it can make me suspend my disbelief. And then, on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, you've got things like Freak Show Wrestling and Sin Bodhi, who are going to be my next guest on the FightBox podcast. And if you want to download that episode or any other past episodes, then of course you can go to fightbox.com and click on podcast, and you'll have all of the past episodes going back to the beginning of the year, actually. The beginning of 2015 is when I first started this shindig. So a lot of great past guests on there. If you're a wrestling fan, I've had Kamala on the podcast. I've had Joe Legend on the podcast. I've had Lanny Poffo, the brother of the Macho Man, on the podcast. We've had so many good wrestlers. Alex Wright from WCW was on here just a few weeks ago. You can download all those episodes, plus all the episodes with kickboxers and MMA fighters and Muay Thai fighters and boxers and referees and everything else on FightBox.com, and then click on podcast. And very often I like to give you guys the opportunity to submit your questions to ask my guests. So make sure you follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook at Real Don Royd on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter at Don Royd DDW, DONROID DDW on Twitter. And I will be giving you guys a heads up from time to time if you wish to submit any questions for my future guests. And of course, you can follow FightBox online as well. I suggest that you go to their YouTube channel. If you're on YouTube already, you can go ahead and check out the FightBox YouTube channel. There are so many great free fights that we've been uploading recently onto our YouTube page. Just search for FightBox HD, all one word. That is the name of the channel. And so many great free fights there. Also, if you want to watch live events streaming online on a pay-per-view basis, or you want to watch free video on demand, absolutely free VOD, we have free full episodes of our programs that you can watch on FightBoxLive.com. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get out of here for now. My next upcoming guests will be Sin Bodhi, otherwise known as Kazarni, on next week's program, and also Cindy Lasher, a professional sports hypnotist, will be on the show coming up in a few weeks. So make sure you tune in for those episodes. And until then, this is Don Royd signing off. So long, everybody.